I know.
Let's change topic entirely, and the kids are home, so there might be a little bit more distraction. Donuts will help. Oh, custard donut. Okay, should have said that out loud. Sorry, everyone. Okay, teamwork. This is very different to risk management. Let's just maybe stand up if you can and sit down. Actually, another thing, this is a little bit more intimate. If I can ask a favor, chuck your cameras on. I hate talking to static images. I feel the eyes, glaring at me. Don't be shy. I'm being selfish, but I just want to see your gorgeous faces. Yeah, yours too. It just helps. And then I can see where you're, don't do it while you're driving. Oh, you're not driving. God. It's all good as you. Yeah, it just helps. And then if I say something dumb, I can look and go, oh, that was dumb. Let me try and rephrase that because I do that quite often. And also the chat. Go on.
Sorry, I was just going to say, I will be dropping out halfway through. It's our monthly meeting. It's starting at 11 Adelaide time.
You'll get the best of it anyway. Don't panic. All right, let's boot on.
Are we recording?
I think I've hit record. Let me just check here. Yep.
Yep, we got the red light up the top.
Yep. All right, let's talk about teamwork, everybody. What is teamwork? If you didn't know, it's ASLV. And that's me. Hopefully, for many of you, you know me, but a few fresh faces in the room. So I'm that silly guy that put a crown on and then a coronet on for the last 5 odd years. Very happily divorced from such things and back to being a common old populace, which I'm very happy about. But there's my little stints, if you care. Sort of a good sort of set of steps, though, I feel, to talk a bit confidently about teamwork, particularly the top two, but certainly the third one. How do we engage with people and make them want to come and play with us is another way to frame teamwork, I think. Just a quick one as well for those that are new. I wish to acknowledge the people of the Kulin Nations on whose lands we meet again today. And I continue to recognise their connection to land, water and community. And I pay my respects to their elders past and present. So, what are we going to try and get out of today? This one was the last thing I did in the slide because I was really struggling with this, which seems kind of stupid because surely it's just obvious, right? But the good and the bad teamwork, you know, what's bad teamwork? Is there such a thing? And I think really importantly for you all here today, recognizing opportunity to encourage teamwork. I think that's what it's all about today. I want you to walk away today bolstered with the idea that, hey, hang on a minute, we could be working as a team on this, and that's even better, right? Rather than, I guess I'll go and do it if I'm asked, you know? So I'll talk you through maybe some of the ways to get there. But I had to put a lot of thought into this presentation. I did this one first because this was the one that scared me the most. But it's also something that I just really feel strongly about. So I'm going to give it a crack. All right, so, and I also had a presentation before this, so I've got to try and remember what my flow was. So we're going to talk about what is teamwork, and there's a gorgeous picture here. I loved when this came out a few years ago. It just gives you a perspective on the SCA you've never seen before. But I hope you can start to see some reasoning for why it's the background today. So what's teamwork? What does it get us? And here's my little tactical diagram of how I'd engage with the bottom team. Going to work around those green and yellow shields and carve into the sides. That's just me. And finally, we're going to talk about how we stimulate it. How do we make it start to really hum in our groups? All right, teams. What is a team? I was thinking a lot about how to show teams. And then it occurred to me that we do have a lot of teams in the SCA, and they're not the teams that are more obvious. We think of perhaps roles and things, but when you've been out in this environment, you know teams. There's names I can throw at you. Let's talk about the Atticas and the Descartes that are teams. And hopefully this video shows you that they behave differently to others. What's happening, for example, over here? What's that all about? And what's that group there doing? And what on earth are these guys doing? As you can see, the impact of their decisions is occurring, and these people here are leaving. Ba-bow, you have died, off you go, and the field withers down. And what you might notice in this video is that it's often the teams that are still there. Might be. Some of the teams are harder to spot. This might be a team. It's hard to know. Some of them are ridiculously easy to spot. They put all the same colors on. They do all the same stuff. You know them. That's a choice they make. There's an intent behind it. Don't be fooled that sometimes people want to disguise their team. Why would you do that? Something to think about. So hopefully that's given you a bit of an idea of what teams can look like in the context of SCA, but I want to talk a little bit more about that. Arguing with my presentation tool today. So if that's a team, what then is teamwork? And I think if you look at that word very closely, you start to get a bit of an idea. What is teamwork? Well, it's not team not work, and it's not team fail, it's not team piss everyone off, it's team work. And you put the S on the end and it makes even more sense, doesn't it? Team works. So here's the Kingdom of Qaids, awesome banner. And here's a banner that we should, in Lochac, be familiar with. Actually, we should be familiar with both of those, shouldn't we? Of course. So this should be a very interesting battle for us to watch. Qaid versus the West. On the left, Qaid. On the right, the West. Let's try and spot some teamwork. Let's skip through a bit. Here they come. Love the music in this too. Really well produced. So what's going on up the top? Let's just pause for a minute. Oh, too many buttons. Here we go. There's something that's happened up the top. There's some sort of maneuver that's happened here. Who likes that maneuver? Just nod. Who doesn't like that maneuver? Nod or shake. A few people shaking. Is it teamwork? Is that teamwork happening up there? Food for thought. Let's watch this one too. Let's see what happens here. Is that teamwork? Here we go. And look, there's another one. Is that teamwork? Is that teamwork? So Qaid now taking the initiative. They've moved from their line across. Look at that. How cool is that? The drone operator is just brilliant. Got a beautiful wall formation here and a charge there. Did you see that? An action there. And then this has moved into a small V. Okay. There's people here observing up the back. They can flow. All right. And then we've got a defensive position set up here. We've got something bad here. This is not good. These guys are now crushed and they're feeling it. They're trying to get out of there, but there's nowhere to go. There's hay bales. So they're trying to squish into this tiny little position up here. Up the top, this is still here. Remember that initial charge? Look what's happened. It's just calmed down now and they're just standing, waving at each other, maybe passing each other tea bags. I don't know. And we zoom into the action here. We see some intent and there's a decision. Whoa, what just happened then? Did anyone see that? Suddenly they all just moved then. How did they do that? They're all standing there. Look at that, they're all standing there. Why not keep standing there? What's wrong with standing there? It seems to be working so far. But then this guy down here, whoa, he gets in there and they say, oh, that went better than expected. And they've all jumped in. Is that teamwork? I don't know. And now we've got a mess. Now they're struggling. Look, they don't really know who to hit. These guys are like, are you bad? I think you're bad. Okay. Is there a pole that could just poke them? What's going on? Yeah, quite an interesting sort of thing. And look up the top here. They're all just chilling out up here. You know, maybe getting a little bit into it. But this is bad news for the Kingdom of the West. They've lost one whole portion of their side. It's gone into disarray. There's no formation. These guys are confused. I don't know. They're running away. Oh, dear. And so we're going to get left with this final group up the top here. Let's fast forward a little bit and see how that ends. About there, I think. Okay, and you can see, oh, here comes a counter charge. Look at this. They're pushing forwards now. They're like, hang on, this is good. But they might not be aware that the rest of their team has failed. And this could be a disastrous decision because now the remainder can come in behind. And we're going to see that now. Here they come. Oh, dear. This is not good for the West. Yes, I know about my donut. Thank you, sweetie. I'll leave it there for now if that's all the same. And we're into a bit of a mop-up phase. These guys are like, oh, look at this, we've won, this is brilliant. Meanwhile, they're getting absolutely routed from behind and they have no idea. All right, it's probably enough of a message for now. Let's move on. Okay, so hopefully you might have seen some teamwork in there. I don't know. Some of the things that look like teamwork aren't, and some of the things that don't look like teamwork are. It's really tricky to spot. Is one person standing in the middle field teamwork? Yeah, he could intentionally be a distraction. He could have been told by the team, go out there and act like a goose so they watch you, because the rest of us are going to run at them. So while they're busy looking at you, they're not going to notice an entire army sneaking up on them. That's a really clever idea, isn't it? One person supporting the team. That person knows their days are numbered, but they're making that decision based on the team. All right, and I'm going to have my assistant here, which does add a certain challenge to these things. Hey, can I finish talking to everybody? Thanks, sweetie. Okay, so I think we need to sort of talk about the elephant in the room a little bit, because you're probably thinking, well, given that one person can change the outcome of the battle, and given that that person can be operating really kind of on their own, how do we separate teamwork from everything else that's good? It's a very good question. I don't think there is a simple answer, but I've come up with this list, and it's a very SCA list, I think. The first one that needs to be stated is just simple prowess. If you've got a whole team of knights and on the other side a whole team of newcomers, doesn't matter how much teamwork those newcomers are using, does it? They're just going to get rolled by that experienced team. They're not going to use any teamwork. They're just going to individually pick out fights. So that can really muddy the waters, and someone can be using awesome teamwork and still get rolled. Personal resource, less obvious in an SCA context, although there are some things that wealthy people benefit from. But on the whole, that's not so relevant in fighting, which is probably one of the reasons we love it so much. But there's other times where teamwork can get absolutely squashed by the availability of resource. We'll come back to that idea. Weight of numbers. Pretty obvious one, isn't it? If those sides were stacked differently, wouldn't matter about any of the other things, just by numbers alone. Sort of ties to the prowess. And the last one, the latent impact of historic decisions. I spent so long trying to think of how to put that into a picture. I was racking my brains. So I wonder if you can think about what I'm trying to say there and type it in the chat. Latent impact of historic decisions. Probably not the best way to word it, but that's what I came up with. Let's see what pictures I came up with. So prowess. All right, here's Buddy. Buddy. And well known as a fantastically good footballer, has not had much fortune since moving away from Hawthorn. So there we can separate prowess from teamwork, perhaps. Personal resource and wealth. I wonder if you know that gentleman. I wonder if he's a good team player or whether he just uses personal resource to get his way. Weight of numbers. I love this movie because it stands against weight of numbers and says, teamwork can win out. I nearly put the Persians in instead. But because you got to remember, the Spartans lost. We forget that because it was such a glorious moment of teamwork. They didn't come out very well at the end of that fight. And what did I come up with for the Leighton one? I can't even remember. Oh, that's right. That moment there. And you might say to yourself, that's not teamwork. He's a single skater. I will remind you that a single skater does not skate on their own to get to the Olympics. They have a little bit of support behind them. And in this case, did Stephen Bradbury win that race? Was it through teamwork? Was it prowess? Was it personal resource? Was it weight of numbers? No, everyone else fell down. But hey, it's the Australian way sometimes. So that was the picture I thought of. Maybe you thought of one that's more clever. So those things aren't teamwork, by the way, just in case you're not clear. Those are different things. We're not talking about them today. Could run a session on prowess. It'll bore you to tears. What do teams do? How do teams work? Let's have a look. Okay, what do teams do first? I spent a fair bit of time on this too. This presentation, I've put way too much time in. Here's my ideas. I won't bore you with the words. Let's look at pictures. Okay, here's me. And here's some resources. Hooray. Where's the team? Well, first we have to acknowledge that resources is things out there, stuff, money, bits, bobs. And here's my team. And what's a team? knowledge, charisma, people skills, cohesion. There's lots of words for that. And really the teamwork only starts when those things start to work together. Okay, otherwise you've just got a group of people or you've just got a forest. But you put that group of people in a forest, suddenly you have a village. Suddenly? Maybe not so suddenly. But if you do that, suddenly you also have a lot of people who are frustrated and disagree with where their house has been put. So you need some way to balance that. And we use some words for that, a lot of words, but I've used some nice words. So here I've used the words communication, consultation, negotiation. You might talk about justice and laws. And even that isn't enough because people like to do things better. So we have to add innovation into it so that we get better at what we do. And also perception. We have to use each other's knowledge effectively. So there's a way to harmonize that in a team. It's not easy. And then we have to recognize for all that, there's other stuff what affects your team. And one of those is, you know, great gifts that fly in the door. Might be recruitment, income, procurement, general satisfaction. They're nice things. And we like those things and they flow typically into our people and into our resources. Sometimes they flow into the other things, but they're less obvious. It's typically those two that we see. So everything's great. Teams are brilliant. Hey, end of the presentation. Things sometimes go wrong too. Hey, maybe this is risk management. You can go and watch my recording if you didn't see that presentation. But here's a couple of things that feel really common when we're talking about teamwork. Those things happen to us, I think, in the SCA when we're working as a team. Pandemics seem like a good one to sneak in. They do bad things. We don't like them and we want to make sure that they leave us alone. And that's kind of what teams do. They kind of balance all that stuff simultaneously. And I could just ask you in relation to one of your teams and you'd probably be able to articulate against each one of those, I hope, how well or poorly you're doing against each of those ideas. I know for my teams, I can do that. Sometimes a bit surprising when you stop and you go, oh yeah, that is a team. And yeah, we really don't have communication in place. That's what's making this team suck so much. I'm forever wondering what the heck the rest of the team are doing. When they tell me it's the best team, but there's no messaging. It's annoying, all right? Similarly, these guys would be amazing if someone would just give them some money, but they don't have any. That sucks. And countless examples in that space. I hope that kind of makes sense. So if that's what they do, how do they work? How do teams work? They need an identity and a purpose. They need some knowledge and capacity, and they've got to set some expectations and recognize some limitations. What does that mean? Well, I guess the question could be better phrased as how to do teamwork. How do we make it work? How do we make it work for us? Have some thoughts there. So when we unpack those words a little bit further, we see that identity is kind of about establishing some sort of mission, vision, value. It's about providing an accurate and sometimes very rapid means of spotting members, thinking about those war scenarios and those colors. But sometimes you don't want to identify the members. If we talk about Ireland's experiences in the past, they went to great lengths to obscure their team from the eyes of others, didn't they? So it's not always the case they want to be visible. Be aware of that. Sometimes teams hate being discovered. I remember discovering a team once at a festival, and I think this is a nice confidential space, so I'm going to share it with you. I went into the, what do we call it? The bar. I suddenly had a brain moment. I went into the bar and I walked in and I happened to be king at the time. That's always convenient. You get a slightly different response when you walk in and you're the king. And I sort of wandered around and there were lots of people smiling and looking at me and plenty of other people sort of hiding behind their drinks and trying to look very small. But one group didn't seem to give two hoots about me walking in that night. And so they were the ones that caught my attention. And I wandered over to that group. And one of the people in that group is with us today. I wonder if they're recognizing this moment. Perhaps they are. It was a group of former seneschals. Oh, look, there's the sigh. He knew exactly what I was talking about. And so I sat down with them and I presented a very innocent sort of persona and hello, people who look kind of senior. It's interesting to see you all here tonight. Enjoying your drinks, I trust. And they all sort of looked a little bit coy and they said, yes, this is like the former seneschals meeting. And yes, We're talking shop. Like, oh, well, you won't mind if I come and listen to you, will I? It sounds like a really interesting place to be. I'm on to you, bud. So I sat and I just listened to that team. And there's an invisible team if ever there was one, right? Who knows that that's a team? Probably you don't. I do. And listening to that team was like, whoa, there's all this stuff that's going on. I had no idea. And I'm the king. This is kind of weird and alarming. But the more I listened, the more I felt comfortable because they're like, and Bud's just good. I wish he was on camera right now. You're an interventionist, Crown. Oh, good. Well, I'm glad you've diagnosed me because I've got no idea what you are. Tell me more. What am I? And so they talk through this idea of the Crown getting involved. Whoa, that's scary. Stay back, Crown. Leave us alone. I said, yeah, I like to get involved because I kind of like this place. Why wouldn't I? So teams, they're not always obvious, but sometimes they're far more powerful when they're working quietly. They're going to hate me for talking about that team, but you know what? I don't care. You guys should probably own that space. Yeah, I'm talking to you, Bart. They need to make sure there's some understanding and rules. Now, that team didn't say to me, you must not discuss this with anyone else, or at least I was drunk enough not to remember, so I apologize if you did. But rules and conduct are so important. You've got to create a structure that people feel like they're inside that team and participating. Otherwise, it's wild. People are going to get hurt, right? And we also have to set and maintain expectations. Is it okay for you to come into my campsite and drink all of my beer? Well, if I tell you it is, then sure. But if I haven't told you, I'd suspect that I might be a bit cross about that. So we've got to set up those. I'm in charge of the beer and you all get to drink it, but this is how I'm going to let you do so. This is the concept. It's not necessarily a rule in a sense of you must not. It's an expectation. I don't mind if you do. Be respectful, okay? Codes of conduct and things like that slip into this space. They're not the same as rules, but the roles as well. And finally, stakeholders. So I put some pictures because I love pictures. They say 1,000 words. So here's the first thing about identity. Who's read that? Who knows what that is? Can anyone just unmute and say, oh, that's our
mission statement?
Oh my God, who got that so
Statement.
quick? Dang, is it written in there? I'm impressed.
No.
That is gold star.
There's been a lot of
It's-
discussion around it in certain groups I'm in, so.
Well,
It's also written like a mission statement.
Yeah, okay, sure. I'm still surprised, and I'm gonna drink a cup of coffee and just calm down that you got that so quick.
Oh, sorry. Are we ruining your pace here?
You totally stuffed me up. That's brutal. But anyway, I can live with that. But I bet you haven't
Apologies.
thought about this word against that statement, have you? Ha! Coming back at you. Here's
You have.
a virtue. And as a peer, I like to wrap myself in virtue because otherwise people would spot that I'm not. So here I've used this word honesty to talk about that identity and purpose. Let's be honest. This is what we are. If you're not doing that, we should probably talk about that because, if you want to do mechanized warfare, that's cool, but not really pre-17th century all that often. So we'll have to really understand that. All right. What about, what's the next one? Oh yeah, identification, identity. Here's someone familiar, but I wonder if too many of you remember that identity. Maybe not. I don't know. There's Jemima. Goodness me. What a sweetheart. And here's a different identity. I wonder if any of you remember that identity. So we can transform our identity and we can shift teams quite quickly, and we can do it for half an hour and then stop. That's important to know. I like the virtue of franchise, and every single vigil, I make sure someone talks about franchise. My name is Gilbert Purchase, after all. We should be thinking about this. Where are we off to now? Roles and conduct. Oh, boring. The sort of state could be a good image to remember that we have rule. We have rule of law. What other images are there? Oh, here's an interesting picture. That's Sir Tycho, and he's being very kind in using a shield because he normally fights Florentine. He is one person I never want to fight, but he's one person I will always hunt down and fight because he is brutal. That stick is enormous and he thumps you like a truck, and you know if you've stuffed up. So there's some honesty for you. But also courtesy. You can see here the fighter kneeling. Yeah, he's so cool, Tycho. I just want to come over and visit you guys again and give him a big hug. He's very honorable too, I think. And here's a different picture. And I think this is also about those roles and that conduct. And this is a beautiful picture, and there's two beautiful people. Well, actually, there's a whole slab of beautiful people, but two in particular that inspire me regularly, doing what they do best, I think. And I like the word courtesy. That's a wonderful value to think about there. Virtue. All right, where are we up to now? That was rules and conducts. Now we're about expectations, and I see the word roles. What sort of roles are we thinking about? Oh, those might be familiar to you. Maybe some of them are yours. Sorry about the image. I couldn't find any prettier than that. Little shout out to Masonry. Can we get some better images of that? They're horrible. There's some images to let us know about some roles in the organization. Hopefully you recognize some of those. And I like the virtue of integrity. And I Googled integrity. It's just often overlooked. Was it not pre-17th century? Because it seems like a pretty good virtue to me, but it seems to be missing from quite a few virtue lists. So anyway, integrity, you know, think about what that virtue means and think about roles. Yeah, vector files. Yeah, someone out there, write in your notes and send an angry email on a typewriter. Okay, and last but by no means least, teams have stakeholders. They're the people you're kind of doing it for, right? Who are they? Well, they are the most important. A lot of the time we forget. My organization loves the term customer focus. Who's our customer?
Members.
Oh, the populace, right? And what's the virtue here? Loyalty. That's an interesting virtue. That's a scary virtue as well. That can be really abused. So we need to be very gentle with that virtue. But I think we do that. And this picture to me summarizes it. There's me, and I'm on my knee to two people who I also feel inspired by, doing what they do best. You know, and we swear those oaths regularly. I mean, I have to, but I want to as well, because that helps everyone know that we're all in it for the best. And there's some familiar faces in that picture. All right. Hopefully that gives you an idea of how to do teamwork. So what's your favorite team? Now, I've got a little activity for you here. Hopefully this works, yep. So click that URL and it'll open up in a web browser. Open that up, and then there's just one thing to do, all right? Don't freak out, please. There's one box on the screen that says enter the code, and hopefully you're about there by now. So you just have to type those numbers in, 26968. That's it. I think you can do it.
Can you minimize the screen share, please? I can't get onto my other screen.
You just click escape. Hit escape, and it'll send me off hacking. Get me out of the way. Zoom's funny like that. Yeah, so 26968. You can do it on your phone too. And for those of you already in there, you'll see the question. What is your favorite team? What is your favorite team? Any team. I don't mind if you say 300. But I'm interested in what you think is your favorite team. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to zip over here, and hopefully that's working. And don't have a look at the screen until you've put your answer in, by the way, because that will just kind of shift your thinking. Just put your answer in and then have another look at the screen. But we're seeing some responses. You can fill this in as many times as you want to. You can go nuts right now, just typing in all the teams you like. I don't mind. What's your favorite team? I mean, I'm so inspired. I was wondering if I was going to see something very different. So you've perhaps surprised me, but perhaps because you've been in Lochac symposiums for the last hours. It's all very fresh. I love the yachting down there. That's awesome. You got a yacht team. That sounds cool. The ambulance crew. That's awesome. Whoever that is. Doesn't have to be SCA related. Team NZ. Are you saying the whole New Zealand? I wonder who put that answer in. But I know New Zealand's feeling really close right now. And you know what? Australia's jealous. You guys are awesome. Keep it up. Inspire us. You're doing a great job. Me and my partner. Oh, you're going to make me cry. That's so sweet. Can't find the interactive box. It's just literally one. There's just one box and it says, put the code in. And then once you've done that, there's one box that says, what's your favorite team? That's it. I couldn't make this any simpler. Don't stress if you can't get there, Divine. It's not the end of the world. My immediate family, that's so sweet too. Yeah, I'd definitely put my family in there. All right. I hope that's insightful. You can keep putting your responses in, by the way. We can come back to this at the end if we've got time and just check in. What's your favorite team? Some good ideas in there. All right. So What does teamwork get us? I think that's a good way to phrase that is, what's so good about teams? Why won't Jim shut up about teams? Not that important, are they? Well, let's think about what makes teams good. And on the other side of the equation, what makes teams not so good. And I always think it's good to start with the bad. Why do we not always want to use teamwork? Well, they do create a lot of overhead. You've got a lot more work to do with a team sometimes. You've got to set up processes. You've got to send things out multiple times. You've got to cover the same ground every time. It's not always easy being a team. You get conflicts emerges. You can't have a conflict with yourself, or at least you wouldn't call it conflict, would you? But with a team, I'm sure you know what that word's all about. That really sucks, doesn't it? So there's a really good reason not to work with a team. And obligation. What on earth does that mean? Obligation. It's a big word. Obliged. You're obliged to turn up to the monthly meeting. As a Baron, formally, I know about obligations. Thank you very much. Not always fun. In fact, I'd say obligations are never fun. So something we have to live with. So there's some bad stuff. There's some costs. And what does that mean? Well, it means that if one person could do something, don't create a council for it. Just do it. Seriously. Let's all take a vote on whether I should turn up to the next meeting. Just turn up. Resources are very scarce. If you are absolutely strapped, I know teamwork can make a more efficient resource, but it can cost, and the cost of the team exceeds your budget. Bad choice. Just stick to getting it done, yeah? Even if it just means putting in a bit of extra time. This one came up in Mistress Rowan's presentation yesterday. This one is brutal. You can do everything right and you still haven't fostered that commitment, or they can't see the value and they just disappear. The flakiness, right? That is far more pain than gain. I think you'll agree. So if you're in that space where you're trying to form a team and the rest of the people just kind of don't see it, don't do it. Just give up. Just walk away or do it yourself. But don't try and drag people along when they don't see the value. That's just painful for everyone, yeah? All right, so teams aren't all good. But what is good about them? Well, there's some wonderful words. And when you see these words, you pretty much sound like an HR poster, right? Collaboration of communicative, resource, cohesive individuals, yada, yada, yada. You get the idea. But it's not so simple. Teams are also temporal. So we have to think about a good team could be a good team in the future, but right now it's uncomfortable because we're forming the team. Who's been in a team that's storming? You all have. All clashing and going, but I want to do that. And then norming. Okay, well, look, you're pretty good at that. So you do that and I'm pretty good at this. I'll do this. And that person can do that because they're not here today. And then finally performing. Hey, look at this beautiful cohesive machine just clicking along nicely, right? So to get to those 1, 2, 3, 4s takes work and time. It doesn't just happen. There's my super team. And another way to frame that is about describing good teams. There's some different ways to frame this, but I thought this one was pretty good. At the bottom, you know, at the initiation, it's just about having a clear objective. If you've got that, you've done all right. Everything else doesn't matter. Then you set up some measurables to say, hey, yeah. Then you get some training. Hey, let's all. And then you get some decision making. Now we can. And then we get some reward. You have done a good job. And when you put all that together, you end up with a team that just clicks. People just want to be there. And it's a marvelous thing. So you've got to think about that temporal effect. That's really important in recognizing a good team. Don't give up on it too early. But sometimes it is a good idea to walk away. So what does that tell us? Well, the name of this course was 5 Reasons Why Lochac Should Be Doing More Teamwork. So there's 4. Then I ran out of ideas, which is a bit alarming because it's literally the name of this presentation. But then I thought about it a bit more. I'm like, no, there's definitely something missing from that list. What is it? What could it possibly be? And then the penny dropped. They're fun. Come on, you know it. I know it. We're social creatures. Sometimes it's good just to have a team, to know you're part of a team. You don't even care what they're doing. It's just great to come along for the ride. So there's 5 reasons why you should be using teamwork. Because they're resourceful, because they're objective and thinking about risk. Remember that conversation back there? Objective can be really important. They're sustainable. Even if one member drops out, the whole thing can just keep flowing all of its own. It's wonderful when you get a team like that. They're engaging. You're bringing people into a world. They want to be in that world, and they stay in that world just because they love it. And the outcome of that is just fun. So there's 5 good reasons, I think. If you've got some other reasons that you can think of, or some other faults and pains, stick them in the chat, because I'll either try and answer them or pass it to someone who feels more comfortable. But I thought those were some good things to talk about now. So what's so good about teams? Well, I suppose we should think about some good teams, make sure that that all checks out, right? So what are some examples of some great teams? This is just my ideas, by the way. You'd have a different picture, but these ones meant something to me. Who remembers that movie? I don't, frankly, remember the movie. I don't remember the story. I really don't remember anything other than the name was funny, because I would have been about 12 when I saw it, and I thought it was about Milo. And when we went and it was about a cat and a dog, I was puzzled for a while. But then I just remember that those two were pretty awesome together. That's the only memory I have of the movie, is Milo and Otis were best mates. And I thought, oh, I want to be a Milo and an Otis one day, my formative years, you know, still stuck in there. Why did I remember Milo and Otis? How funny. What else is formative? Well, that's just 2. That's a team of 2, but some people pointed out their partner. That's a perfectly good team. You don't need more than 2. Takes 2 to tango. What about this mob, hey? They were pretty good. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I think they taught a lot of kids about how people can do different things and still work really well together. Everyone had their favorite weapon, right? And I wonder if you can guess which one was my favorite weapon. I don't think I'll hand out gold stars, but for those that have seen me on the field, you might spot one weapon combination out of that packet. Yeah, you're totally right. It's the nunchuckers, but we're not allowed to use them in the SCA. So I just went with the Florentine instead. I have fiddled around with Psy. It's hard. What about that team? I mentioned Buddy. Got to mention my football team. You know, I can't stand football. I really can't. But you know what? The Hawks, if you Google best AFL team, they pretty much come up the top of the list every time. Why is that? Well, when they were on song, when they were cooking with gas, they were untouchable. I went to a few games and I was like, yeah, okay, that's a team that's working right there. They are kicking ass. What about that team? There's a big team and a powerful team, and they've come awake again. It's so great to see. They've suddenly realized they've got a new objective. Let's get to Mars, and everything's come back on fire, and it's great to see. But I really want us to get to Mars, especially by the time my daughter's a bit older. What about this team? What team is that? I think you'll know it, right? It's a pretty big team. Pretty good team. They did all right. Space Force, that's definitely not Space Force. Space Force, I don't think I have the same level of respect for either than NASA, incidentally, just between us. That's the Romans in it. You know that. They're a pretty good team. But were they kind of the best team? I don't know. I think there might be one that kind of transcends that one. Hey, who knows what that team is? Of course you do. Pretty awesome leader on that one. Pretty hard to stop, right? They've even invaded our Lochac every now and then. That's how powerful that crew is. What a wonderful team. Pretty hard to beat in their prime. What about some shockers? What's a team that you just shake your head at when you see? I struggled with this because you just block them out of your mind. You're like, oh, I don't have time for that. And I was actually chatting to my squire and they came up with this idea and I'm like, yeah, that's a pretty good example. Actually, it was my squire's partner. But anyway, let's not get into the detail. What about this team? What team is that? I don't know if you recognize that team. The flag's a bit of a giveaway in it. That's the US Congress. Are they a good team? Well, I think you're entitled to your own opinion, but I think if you look at things at the moment, it's not really a team that's doing well. Why is that? They've forgotten their objective, haven't they? They're so busy trying to win against each other, they've forgotten they're on the same side. Guys, just focus on the pandemic that's happening right now, would you? No, we're too busy trying to score points. And you know, that happens a lot in politics at the moment. It's sad. We can do better. Shout outs to New Zealand. I don't know what this is about. Here comes a surprise. Where do you think we are? So let's go back to the Slido and I'm going to open up a new question. So just back, if you've still got it open, otherwise the message is still there. I'll put it in again. Go back to that. Now I've got to go into the behind the scenes here. And I've forgotten where I've put that. So let's just, excuse me while there we are. Okay, the question should be up now. You should see it straight away. I've got too many windows open. Get in there, answer that question. Do you think Lochac is a great team? Gonna have to speed it up a bit. So I'm gonna move on. We're getting some answers. Interesting. 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 Take your time. Get your answer in there. Come back and check that right at the end if I've got some time. Lochac. Team Lochac. Go Team Lochac. Okay. Last section. Last section. How do we stimulate teamwork? We need an action plan, don't we? We need to get on with it. So how can we do that? Well, let's just think first about, are there teams already in Lochac? Because that's a good start, isn't it? Well, what teams do you think about when you think about Lochac? I saw some households, I saw some baronies in there, I saw some shires and some other groups, I saw the Shirogans. Here's some things I thought about. So first, when we think about Lochac, I thought about the peers. Everyone talks a lot about these people. They're pretty cool, not without their flaws, but they can be pretty awesome teams when they want to be. So there's the first one. And let's not forget our company of archers. They're awesome too. And there's some other shout outs down in the martial domain as well that need a bit more love and attention. Why are they so awesome? I'll tell you why they're so awesome. It's a bit quiet. So here's my team. Go Team Chivalry. Wasn't one back then. Look at everyone. They jump out of their chairs. I want to be up the front. Let me wave my sword around dangerously. You get the idea. So peerage can really add teamwork in, can legitimize hard work and support and enrich. About groups. Who's heard of that group? I have. Hope you have. It's a pretty awesome group. Shout outs. There's a few more around there. I apologize for the age of this chart. There's a few mistakes and things, but anyway, you get the idea. There's lots of groups. They're all pretty rad, in my experience. What else? Well, you see someone like that and you think, hey, we're talking about teams, aren't we? We're talking about teams. Crown's not a team, is it? Oh, luckily the Crown's in here so they can throw something at me because they've got a huge household and a huge support network that makes up the team. They're just the front face. They're just the beautiful faces. Shout out to England. Behind the scenes, so much teamwork happening to make it all work and look awesome. And there's other teams like that. There's another beautiful face. And hopefully a few of you know that face. And there's the Kingdom Seneschal roles largely. It's a bit of a strange list anyway, but I seem to feature in there, so I'm going to use it. But there's lots of teams like that. If you go and have a look on our website, you see a long list. And there's some even bigger teams in the SCA. Some of you have the great joy of being on those teams. The board, scans, society. And all those teams actually work together. So I asked you about whether Lochac's a great team. Here's some of its team dynamics. I've drawn it out for you. You could almost call this an org chart. Don't tell anyone. But it's interesting to think about the dynamics that are happening within these teams. Are we always working on the same side, or does sometimes we look a little bit like a certain US political structure? You be the judge. And are there any teams missing from that list? If I don't see some nods in the room, I'm going to be cross because then I haven't delivered on this training. There's a lot of lists. There's a lot of teams not on this list. Why aren't they on the list? Why? Why don't I have those teams on the list? It's a really good question to ask yourself, right? Let's unpack that. Where's the populace? Yeah, fair call. Type them in, by the way. Type in other Kingdom officers. Yeah, shout outs to all the Kingdom officers. I just put a quick summary in because it's like 4 pages of them. All right, but I love you all. I'll put the baronial in. Oi, I'll put it. That was the map. Pay more attention. The board. What are you talking? What? What? Have to correct. What is that logo there, Clara? Goodness gracious me. SCA Proprietary Limited. No, SCA Limited. There you go. Goodness me. Schooling our own board members. All right, establishing a new team. Why aren't we getting more? Well, we've got to go through these steps, yeah? We've got to do this, and I think sometimes we're not. So we've got to identify a purpose, get some membership, agree on that purpose, identify and support the leaders, set expectations, communicate with others on how they can or cannot join in. And then be patient. We've got to take them off the road. We've got to accept role change. We've got to members to find the road. We've got to be firm. We've got to identify and adjust behavior. You've got to be realistic. We've got to get goals. Who's heard of SMARTER? I hope you've heard of SMARTER. We've got to adjust those goals. All right? They're not always right. And we've got to be clear. We've got to document things. We've got to keep records. We've got to consult. Okay. Maybe there's a few reasons why we don't have teams throughout Lochac. Maybe we need to get on with that. There's SMARTER. I always love SMARTER. The agreed. That's the team in the goal. Agreed. If you don't agree, there's no team. So how can you, I think I had a clever little animation there. No, how can we stimulate? How can you stimulate? I lost the we. How can you stimulate teamwork? This, I'm talking to you now. How can we encourage these teams? Well, we need to encourage successful teams and we need to see opportunities for teamwork. Who knows what that is? Whose badge is that? Crickets?
Pride of Lochac.
Yeah, you're not meant to answer. Okay, Clara got it first anyway. That's all right. Because you're a recipient of that one, aren't you? Pride of Lochac. What an awesome award. Okay, let's talk about that award. Pride of Lochac. It is for people who are in groups and doing awesome stuff. We should be handing these out like candy. Well, it's a great start. Who has that award? You can go now and try and find out. I failed last night. It's not exactly easy to locate the list of recipients. It's not. I couldn't find, Bart, go find it now. I couldn't find it. If it is there, it's jolly well hidden. Yeah, you might know it, Your Majesty, but I couldn't find it. Hey, maybe we should think about that a bit more. Why aren't we really putting these on like the front page of our website? Yeah, these are like groups of people who are awesome. I couldn't even find the list. That's crazy talk. We've got to embed expectations of teamwork. We've got to put it into our org structure, yeah? Now, I took the Lochac laws and I shoved it in word clouds. You note it's one of my favorite toys at the moment. Can you spot in that list many teams? Consorts borderline. Consorts borderline. Crown events. Yeah, that's not really a team. It's just an outcome. College of Scribes. Hey, there's a team. So there's one, and Kingdom. There's two. It's not really sort of jumping out, is it? What's that?
Kingdom Seneschal, given the
Well,
deputies.
it's talking about
Orders.
individual.
Like,
And Seneschal, it should be Seneschal, then we'd know it's the team. Anyway, you know, word cloud's very limited, but I hope you can see that teams aren't really kind of first and foremost in our documents. So we've got to get those teams into our org structure. We've got to encourage and support our leaders. All right. If people are trying to lead and we're not supporting them, what happens? They fatigue, don't they? They weary and they burn out.
burnout.
And those people are so precious to us. Once we burn a few of them, whoa, we feel it. Thank goodness I'm not one of them. Nearly. All right, here's our crown. Crown's doing the Pride of Lochac thing. They're recognising through our baronies awards. What about the Shires? But they're doing lots of recognition as well, and that's awesome. So shout outs to the Crown. You guys are awesome. But let's talk about that last stop point. Proactively manage difficult people. Wonder if this relates to a conversation yesterday. I'll leave it at that, yeah? Dispute resolution. There's a nice bunch of faces from yesterday getting into it. Two apart. All right. Well, hopefully that's given you some ideas and maybe a few questions. I'm glad that I'm at the end of it. And I hope that you've got some ideas about how you can stimulate teamwork in Lochac. That's the end of my presentation. Oh, I'm on time again. Let's have a quick look at those survey or that survey. Where do we end up? Okay. All right. So it's interesting that there's kind of two peaks on that. And there's some really interesting, oh, can you see what I can see? Maybe not. Can you see the bars? Any nods? You getting the bars? It should. Yep, great. So we're getting an average of 6.6. Does that sound like great? No, I don't think that's great. It's certainly not terrible. But there's a bit of a mixed bag of results there, and a few people are feeling like teamwork wasn't fun. I can see that in the poll. I'd probably be putting my tick somewhere down that end of the spectrum too, if I'm honest. I think the SCA does teamwork really well in a few circumstances. Like, for example, when there's a bit of a crisis, we all haul in, don't we? Another example is at the end of an event or at the start of an event. My experience has been everyone just jumps in and helps. You don't even know there's a team, and then suddenly everything's tidy. Whoa, what just happened? But I think the strategic end of what we do, the long-term visionary stuff, I think we're scared of that sort of teamwork. I don't know why. I think we should do more. Maybe it's because it's not in our laws and our structure. Maybe it's to do with that very complicated set of lines for what is ultimately a very small volunteer organization. But something is holding us back, I feel, in some of our teamwork. So I must admit, I'm not surprised to see 6.6. And I really think that we could set a KPI to come back and do this. So I'm really interested in some pulse surveying. Do some really proactive work in this space and then see if that number's changed. Obviously, this is a poll of 8 people, so let's not read too much into it. But, you know, are we serious about teamwork? That's my question for you. And in your office, are you serious about teamwork? I'll shut up now. Questions, comments, thoughts? Fire away. Just realized I've got 2 coffees on my table. That's sort of telling, isn't it? Any questions? I can read through the comments here.
That must be a big donut then.
It's actually tiny. It's quite underwhelming, and I don't know if Zoom will let me show you, but it does look nice nonetheless. I'll live.
Given you've been in lockdown and haven't been able to get them, I'm sure it's going to taste wonderful.
I think so. Yeah, donuts, always good. Good for teamwork, donuts. Okay, any other questions? I've just bamboozled.
You've thrown up some stuff I haven't thought about before, so thank you.
Yeah, I just cut out then. I think that might have been Bartholomew. Apologies for who that was. Gosh. All right, well, I'm happy to hang back, but you're welcome to press on to the next session. I'll hit the stop button on the record.